Welcome to Remembering You, a space for slowing down, seeing again, and gathering the parts of yourself that the world asked you to forget.
Each week, we wander through stories, ancient, personal, and collective, to explore how perspective changes everything. How what we look at and how we look can open doors to who we truly are.
Take a breath, feel your feet.
You've arrived.
Let's begin remembering you.
There is something that feels truer than true, and I know that it has to do with being an eternal optimist.
Oh.
Looking at life as it is half full.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing potential possibility, spaciousness becoming.
Ooh, we are diving in the deep end right away.
It doesn't matter. Yeah, it doesn't matter where or what. There is and I know some of this is nature and also some of it is nurture in my experience.
Mm-hmm.
Everything is an opportunity.
Has it always felt like that for you?
It has. And I think a lot of it stems, I give my mom credit for her taking experiences and that were unpleasant.
Yeah.
And finding an opportunity in and through.
She definitely does have that.
It's a gift.
Yeah, she does it masterfully.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've sat in some conversations with her about some really hard things and then just kind of listened to her feel through them and talk through them. And I left the conversation thinking, holy crap. Like she's a bit of a wise one.
So there's wisdom in that skill, and it also can get dark pretty fast with bypassing and silver lining it.
Yep.
And so our topic today has a lot of nuances and is complicated and is beautiful and delightful, and I think it is life-changing.
Oh yeah.
And it's meant not to just be believed, it's meant to be experienced.
It has to be. You can start maybe with some cognitive kind of pointers, but then obviously none of this works if it's not embodied and lived maybe from the heart or from however you want to frame that, from experience itself. Yeah.
So I also have a little bit of fear and trembling in opening up this topic.
Really? Well, so should we name explicit? I mean, I know it's going to be in the episode title, but should we verbally distinguish what we're going to talk about?
So everything that we've said up to this moment in the last 2 minutes, guess, what do you think our topic is today?
Oh, God.
Those of you that are channeling your inner Ryan and Alice-Ann, what are we talking about?
Abundance and scarcity.
Abundance versus scarcity, which immediately we have put that into a binary.
Yeah, isn't that fun?
We do that without even thinking.
Yeah. We'll end in the non-dual land, but we got to start off with duality.
We have to find something to be grounded in and make sense of.
That's very helpful.
So my fear and trembling is when I was a pastor and this turned online for me, that the universe is for my good, or love is for my good, or God is for me. Who can be against me? And I remember preaching a series of messages on the topic of trusting the goodness of God in my life. And I told stories, and I had lots of scripture, and I had science, and I had someone who I cared very dearly about in our congregation go and do something financially.
Oh.
As a result of what I was talking and inviting people into. An experience.
Did they go spend a bunch of money thinking
abundance.
that they were going to make themselves a bunch of money?
They went into something and really quick were underwater.
Oof.
And I could see it as it happened. And then a year later, we were in a conversation because we were close, and they brought it up. And I said, I am sorry. That's not what I was talking about. And they said, we know now, but that's not how we were hearing what you were saying.
Sure.
And so
yeah,
there is a sense of responsibility and weight to this topic that we are dipping our toes into today.
It is easy to misunderstand. Well, and it's easy to both turn into a straw man, and it's easy to, to dismiss and be like, this is ridiculous. Like, how could you possibly talk about, the world is abundant naturally, or that God is for you, or however you want to frame that. Because obviously, like, all you just look around the world and people are starving and there is war and there is corruption and, how could you possibly? And so it's easy to dismiss. And then it's also very easy to misunderstand and then execute in a way that is, well, like your friend, or, I mean, I imagine it can happen in a gajillion different ways where we just
totally,
we're just naive, or just perhaps it like speaks to a part of us that has been yearning or very hungry for something.
Desperate
is a great word. And then we just run with it. It's kind of what our shadow does. Gives us just a little bit of permission, and then we get ourselves in hot water. But that is a learning lesson. I mean, there is a kind of abundance in that, even though it's painful.
So as we progress through this episode, be curious. Am I listening to this with ears that are telling me I'm okay, I'm enough, I don't need anything? Or am I listening to this with I am less than, I am failing, I am not worthy? So the way that we listen to, I would say, truth is going to then influence the way that we implement the truth in our lives, and that we're wrestling with and struggling with. So if I feel like I am less than, if I hear that there is something that I can believe in or believe for or take control in my life and then have it, that will give me a sense of power or fill that void in my experience of I am less than, and now I am equal. So word of caution and self-discernment as we are unpacking this.
That's good.
So what do you mean, my love, when we use the word scarcity?
So our brains are just kind of naturally wired for it. Despite your opening saying that you have not, even you who are the eternal optimist, have a brain that naturally notices when things might go wrong or where things might go wrong. Because, of course, from an evolutionary perspective, it was highly advantageous to assume that the rustling of the leaf out of the corner of our eye might be a lion trying to attack us or whatever, because that one time may very well kill us. And so our brains just have a negativity bias. I heard a quote. It was a clinical psychologist, and he said, our brains are Velcro for bad things and like Teflon for the good things. Like everything can go right in a day, but one thing goes wrong. And what do we focus on? We focus on the thing that was painful or that went wrong, so to say. And And so scarcity is that it's easy to look out into the world, or like, you think of the news. Everybody is talking about what's going wrong, not what went well today. It's so simple to get lost in that and to think that that is the truth of the world. Now, it's not to say that we should bypass in some la fairyland kind of way. Like, we do need to stay connected to reality and to what problems are. But scarcity mindset is a kind of veil or distortion on top of reality where we filter out a lot of the good and all of the signals that there's so much here already.
Which is important to name, that if I'm looking at what I don't have, even though I get more and more and more, all I see is what I don't have.
Yeah.
And I feel a sense of lack.
Yeah.
Less than.
Yep. Conspicuous acquisition as opposed to genuine. Like, there's a difference between abundance and conspicuous acquisition, where we're just more, that greedy, never enough, no matter how many new clothes we have or how many new fancy pair of shoes or how much money in our bank account. It's like it just doesn't. Like, when we've all felt that, or like we just ate a big plate of food and are full and our bellies are full, but yet we still find ourselves craving and wanting more. Like, that is scarcity. And so it's so disorienting to navigate when you're in the thick of it. And the last thing in the world that feels true is that I have enough and that it's all okay. So we have to train ourselves. We have to practice.
I think back over my story, and 5-6 years ago, I was squarely planted in minimalism.
Oh yeah, you were a darn monk.
It was just a few pairs of pants and shoes and shirts.
Your apartment was the most sparse thing I had ever seen in my life. It was delightful.
It was such an important season in my life of embracing death and loss and a monumental change of identity that my ego had been firmly planted in since early childhood. And it only made sense to let things go.
So wise.
And I was content with little. There are moments where I am frustrated with having a garage that's messy and has stuff in it, and may have a partner that moves things around occasionally. And
no, never.
So abundance and scarcity also can directly affect the way we relate to the people who are most important to us.
Oh, sure. Yeah, this affects our relationships as well.
In our life, both directly and indirectly. and it is okay. I also feel like it would be important for me to say that just because I lived a season of life in a minimalistic way in relationship to things, it doesn't mean that I don't have things that ping my sense of security. Like, if I get something, or if there is something that I add to my experience, then I will have arrived. Like, that is still a part of the human experience. And so, just to put that out there, that I have yet to meet someone who doesn't have their thing, whether that's peanut M&Ms or their collection of this or that, or however they spend their time with video games. Like, there are things that all of us have that will, in different ways and different times, speak to us in a seductive way.
Yeah. Desire is fundamental to the human experience, no matter how aesthetic of a life you have. Yeah. It's not to erase the desire, but just to learn to relate to it with more wisdom. And I heard a very good point. I think it was the clinical psychologist that I was listening to. Well, so I'll say this, and then I'm going to ask you for your definition on abundance mindset, because we talked about scarcity, but we haven't explicitly named what we mean. So his pointer was like, abundance mindset is not thinking positive all the time or having all of the things that you need and everything being perfect and you're never uncomfortable. It's more like you have cleared out your distorted views and ways of relating to objects, people, experiences, the world, which then makes the real threats highly salient and clear. So, and then your confidence about what there is to do in relation to the messy relationship, the threat out in the, maybe the loss of a job, your body gets ill, then you can respond in a way that is clean and clear. It doesn't get all disorganized and distorted, and you don't end up doing something super stupid or just ignoring it and thinking that it's going to go away. And so that's kind of a facet of this abundance mindset. It's more like, I suppose the Buddhist term for this would be polishing the mirror. Like, we are cleaning the mirror of the way that we perceive, and that this is a way to do that. So hearing that, I'm curious how you think of abundance or how you experience it.
I would point towards abundance in nature as a teacher. Think about the oak tree and how it produces all of these acorns, nuts, and only a small, tiny fraction are actually going to turn into trees. And yet the example is abundance. So much so that it's being shared with all of the creatures and critters on the forest floor that are taking the acorns and using them. So abundance is sharing, having more than enough to share, and being in a lifestyle of generosity is what.
What would you say to the person who is inclined to give in a way that is self-sacrificing?
In a way that's detrimental to their
well-being? Like people-pleasing, or like always in service to others, but in a way that is not.
Yeah, so let's come to the forest illustration and the tree. It is in a symbiotic relationship with all of the other critters.
Yeah.
And there is a mycelial network below the surface of all the trees sharing what they need with one another so that they can have an outflow of extra and giving and sharing. And so with that mycelial network, there is giving and taking. There are boundaries as much as there are just to he that ask of it, to he that asketh of thee give without reserve, And that doesn't mean that I haven't taken care of my reserves and haven't been nurturing and supporting myself. So the unhealthy example of someone who is giving in an unhealthy way of themselves, however they're giving, is that they're giving. So if they're giving because they want people to like them, they're actually giving out of not abundance. It's actually scarcity.
Yeah.
Because it's not coming from a place in their own experience of I am enough. And because I have enough, I can share and to give. And so it is something to be aware of. And I think in my experience, there have been times where the pendulum has swung in different directions.
Sure.
Where I have given too much. I've said too much. I've done too much. I've asked for too much. And in that lesson, there was a course correction and finding center that is, I would say, a healthy way of relating to being generous.
Yeah. I like the nature as a teacher for an abundance mindset. It reminds me of how the scientific community has tended to frame nature as a competitive, we have to fight for every resource.
Dog eat dog.
Yeah, dog eat dog. Nature,
survival of the fittest.
Brutal. And what the more recent, as science has kind of matured over its, existence of hundreds of years now, and our fields of study are becoming interdisciplinary. So the biologists are talking to the physicists who are talking to the sociologists, and they are starting to now, what is more true is that nature is actually deeply, fundamentally cooperative. Yes, of course, animals eat other animals, and, species of plants will compete for the same space. But then that is to ignore all, like you said, the mycelial network that is going on underneath the surface. That's a kind of a great pointer for all of nature. There is this enormous interdependence. No species survives on its own, including the human, at least not very well. And it's all in a continual relationship with one another, which when we look at nature as if it is brutal and competitive
and scarcity minded.
That is scarcity mindset. Yeah.
What would it look like if an oak tree was comparing itself to a cedar tree?
Isn't that funny? Yeah,
hello.
It's absurd. And yet we do it all the time.
The reverse, so it doesn't. It's not in a rush. It simply becomes itself.
Yeah.
And its abundance comes from its rootedness rather than in its performance. And that can also be a little bit of a cue for our self-awareness when I start to feel that there's something I need to get or achieve or prove when I am that can be a reminder that I might not be resting into my rootedness in who I am. Or let's say a wildflower. No flower compares itself to another flower. Like each bloom is blooming according to its own nature. And nature never asks a sunflower to become an oak.
No. And each has a very precious, valuable place. One is not better than another. And we are deeply prone to comparison. We are in a grocery store checkout line and we notice somebody else's really nice shoes, and then we look at our own and maybe think, oh, these ratty old things, they're so much better than me. Or we look at other people's fancy cars on the road, or the size of their house or the width of their social circle and who they know and who they're rubbing shoulders. I mean, there's a gajillion ways. And that is a deep distortion of what is actually true. And it's so easy to get caught in.
So ways that I would say scarcity can show up in our life, and then on the opposite, the way abundance, we can live from a sense of abundance, is how we relate to success, achievement, fame, wealth, beauty, spiritual growth, being needed, being right, or in this mode of constant productivity.
I heard an interesting quote about, even for those who are, very concerned about productivity and, whether it's in your professional career or maybe you have a goal, like goals are valid and necessary and helpful in our life. And scarcity mindset carries a very high, it's hard on our bodies, it's hard on our minds, it's hard on our emotions, and it will, of course, stress will decrease our performance. It'll decrease our capacity to make wise decisions. And so for those who maybe think, oh, this abundance mindset, well, I mean, that's for the privileged people who already have enough or aren't being systemically undercut. And it's a way to reframe our understanding that in the same way that we wouldn't poison our drinking water and then expect ourselves to continue to live a healthy life, the very nature of how we look at the world and ourselves and the problems that we're trying to wrestle with, when we're coming from a place of scarcity, like we're just constantly undercutting ourselves and the other people around us and our future capacity without maybe even realizing it. And so abundance mindset is naturally generative. Like we feel open, we are relaxed, we are much more at ease. And of course, scarcity just naturally contracts the mind and the body, and we get narrowly focused and we can only see like what is directly in front of us instead of opening up and taking in the whole view. And so even for the very simple thing of just having a goal and being able to achieve it, abundance mindset is like highly practical.
Mm-hmm.
It's not meant, we can turn it into a deeply spiritual thing, but it also exists at the layer of just wise practicality for living just a decent functional life too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It makes me think of my goal for some weight gain, putting muscle on.
Oh yeah. Yep.
And scarcity mindset was I've worked out, I've been very athletic my whole life, and I've never been able to put on muscle.
Mm-hmm.
Abundance mindset was I haven't been eating enough protein and I need to up my protein and creatine.
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold, I'm putting on muscle.
Yeah.
And
it's great.
It's because of an abundance mindset that there is freedom to try something new or to recognize, to be able to see what is true and what course corrections need to be made versus it's dangerous, operate from fear.
Yeah.
The world's out to get me. My body has always failed me. It will always fail me in the future. It's not going to cooperate. Those real subtle, sometimes very subtle, ways of thinking about ourself and our experience can undercut what is actually the becoming experience for us in our life.
Yep. Well said.
People that I have worked with over the years around this idea of scarcity versus abundance make incremental progress little by little, step by step. And it doesn't come in a huge measurable change. And it's important to name that, just like in a forest, when a wildfire comes through and burns all the vegetation, the way that the forest responds is just little by little. First, there are pioneer species that arrive and they help stabilize the soil. And they create shade for the soil to rest and rejuvenate. And then they're preparing for the next season of species that will take root and grow. And it's important to, I think, embrace or rest into the truth or the fact that nature rarely rushes. And so in this topic, take a deep breath. One stage is going to make the next one possible. And abundance unfolds in stages rather than appearing all at once.
Yeah, usually when things are shifting very quickly in nature, it's deeply destructive. Like I'm thinking of all of the flooding that we just experienced here in Central Texas this last week. Uh, yeah, when things are moving fast in nature, it's usually a bad, like it's not, it's clear, it's deeply destructive. Whereas, yes, the idyllic, beautiful, rich landscape that may come to mind, if we think of, if we asked you to imagine an abundant scene in nature, that scene took likely 100 years or more to cultivate and requires like enormous interconnected things going on down in the soil, and there's multiple layers of things that live real close to the ground and then things that provide big tall and everything in between, and there's a diversity of species coming and going, and there's a microclimate that changes slowly throughout the year. So yeah, that's a good reminder. And our own interior is very much the same way, because we are nature. I mean, we are no different. We are subject to all of the same rules, so to say, or laws.
And today we're going to talk about a story that has been around for the eons.
Yeah, lots of different cultures.
It connects very beautifully and speaks to this idea of scarcity versus abundance in a beautiful way that only a story can do that for us. You want to introduce us?
Yeah. We thought it would be a good or a helpful lens to, rather than, so like we've been speaking at the, very practical, scientific, rational, giving examples, like that is an important layer. But then we also wanted to spend a little time marinating in the mythological, the storytelling, because this is an enormously important part of the human experience. I mean, this is what humans have been doing, and we still do to this very day. All of our movies and our TV shows and, the gossip that we tell one another around the water cooler at work, like we tell stories to one another. And this one comes from Clarissa Pinkola Estes. So she's a Jungian psychologist and wrote a book called Women Who Run with the Wolves. This is myths and stories of the wild woman archetype. And this is a book that is not just for women. It is written as if it is just for women in a way. But I think generally speaking, our needs are the same. Like we do have differences in some of how our biology is wired, but fundamentally, like the human needs for safety and security and belonging, and like there's so much more that we have in common than we do that is different. And so all of her stories, I think, are just as true for men as they are for women. But of course, socially, we have different experiences, and so that kind of lends itself to different. The woman's experience throughout all cultures, throughout all of history, are very, very different than a man's. And so then that naturally just shapes how we experience the world. So anyway, so this is a story that in her book is really written as if it is speaking only to a woman, but everything that's in here is just as relevant for a man. The story is called The Handmade Red Shoes. Clarissa was adopted as a child and came from a Mexican family and then was adopted into a Hungarian one. And each of those cultures have tremendously deep, rich storytelling. I mean, they have so many beautiful stories. And then what she did as a Jungian analyst was, so depth psychologist, kind of somebody who's trained to understand dreams, understand archetypes, understand the shadow. Carl Jung was the one who coined the term the shadow and really kind of shone a light on it. And she took the myths of the two cultures that she was from and wove in a lot of psychology, a lot of depth psychology. She does it absolutely masterfully. And so I thought it would be interesting to read the myth, and then we'll just briefly kind of cover some of the pointers that she talks about, because it really beautifully highlights the scarcity mindset and how it can kind of trap us. And of course, I think we will all recognize ourselves in them. So, anything else you want to add to that before I read the story itself?
This was the first book that we read together. It was fantastic.
It was so much fun.
Highly recommend.
Yeah. Yeah, we had a lot of fun. It's a long book. Okay, The Red Shoes. Once there was a poor motherless child who had no shoes. But the child saved cloth scraps wherever she found them, and over time sewed herself a pair of red shoes. They were crude, but she loved them. They made her feel rich, even though her days were spent gathering food in the thorny woods until far past dark. But one day, as she trudged down the road in her rags and her red shoes, a gilded carriage pulled up beside her. Inside was an old woman who told her she was going to take her home and treat her as her own little daughter. So the wealthy old woman's house they went, and the child's hair was cleaned and combed. She was given pure white undergarments and a fine wool dress and white stockings and shiny black shoes. When the child asked after her old clothes, and especially her red shoes, the old woman said the clothes were so filthy and the shoes so ridiculous that she had thrown them into the fire where they burnt to ashes. The child was very sad, for even with all of the riches surrounding her, the humble red shoes made by her own hands had given her the greatest happiness. Now she was made to sit still all the time, to walk without skipping, to not speak unless spoken to, but a secret fire began to burn in her heart, and she continued to yearn for her old red shoes more than anything. As the child was old enough to be confirmed on the day of the innocents, the old woman took her to the old crippled shoemaker to have a special pair of shoes made for the occasion. In the shoemaker's case, there stood a pair of red shoes made of the finest leather that were finer than fine. They practically glowed. So even though red shoes were scandalous for the church, the child who chose only with her hungry heart picked the red shoes. The old lady's eyesight was so poor that she could not see the color of the shoes, so she paid for them. The old shoemaker winked at the child and wrapped the shoes up. The next day, the church members were agog over the shoes on the child's feet. The red shoes shone like burnished apples, like hearts, like red-washed plums. Everyone stared, even the icons on the wall, even the statues stared disapprovingly at her shoes. But she loved the shoes all the more. So when the pontiff intoned, the choir hummed, the organ pumped, the child thought nothing more beautiful than her red shoes. By the end of the day, the old woman had been informed about her ward's red shoes. Never, never wear those shoes again, the old woman threatened. But the next Sunday, the child couldn't help but choose the red shoes over the black ones, and she and the old woman walked to church as usual. At the door to the church was an old soldier with his arm in a sling. He wore a little jacket and a red beard. He bowed and asked permission to brush the dust from the child's shoes. The child put out her foot and he tapped the soles of her shoes with a little wig-a-jig-jig song that made the soles of her feet itch. "Remember to stay for the dance," he smiled and winked at her. Again, everyone looked askance at the girl's red shoes, but she so loved the shoes that were bright like crimson, bright like raspberries, bright like pomegranates that she could hardly think of anything else, hardly hear the service at all. So busy was she turning her feet this way and that, admiring her red shoes, that she forgot to sing. As she and the old woman left the church, the injured soldier called out, "What beautiful dancing shoes!" His words made the girl take a few little twirls right then and there. But once her feet had begun to move, they would not stop, and she danced through the flower beds and around the corner of the church until it seemed as though she had lost complete control of herself. She did a gavotte, and then a zarda, and then waltzed by herself through the fields across the way. The old woman's coachman jumped up from his bench and ran after the girl, picked her up, and carried her back to the carriage, but the girl's feet in the red shoes were still dancing in the air as though they were still on the ground. The old woman and the coachman tugged and pulled, trying to pry the red shoes off. It was such a sight, all hats askew and kicking legs, but at last the child's feet were calmed. Back home, the old woman slammed the red shoes down on a high shelf and warned the girl to never touch them again. But the girl could not help looking up at them and longing for them. To her, they were still the most beauteous things on the face of the earth. Not long after, as fate would have it, the old woman became bedridden, and as soon as her doctors left, the girl crept in the room where the red shoes were kept. She glanced up at them so high on the shelf. Her glance became a gaze, and her gaze became a powerful desire, so much so that the girl took the shoes from the shelf and fastened them on, feeling it would do no harm. But as soon as they touched her heels and toes, she was overcome by the urge to dance. And so out the door she danced and down the steps, first in a gavotte, then a zarda, and then in a big daring waltz, turns in rapid succession. The girl was in her glory and did not realize she was in trouble until she wanted to dance to the left and the shoes insisted on dancing to the right. When she wanted to dance around, the shoes insisted on dancing straight ahead. And as the shoes danced the girl rather than the other way around, they danced her right down the road, through the muddy fields, and out into the dark and gloomy forest. There against a tree was the old soldier with the red beard, his arm in a sling, and dressed in his little jacket. "Oh my," he said, "what beautiful dancing shoes." Terrified, she tried to pull the shoes off, but as much as she tugged, the shoes stayed fast. She hopped on one foot and then on the other, trying to take off the shoes, but her one foot on the ground kept dancing even so, and her other foot in her hand did its part of the dance also. And so dance and dance and dance she did, over the highest hills and through the valleys, in the rain and in the snow, and in the sunlight she danced. She danced in the darkest night and through sunrise, and she was still dancing in twilight as well. But it was not good dancing. It was terrible dancing, and there was no rest for her. She danced into a churchyard, and there a spirit of dread would not allow her to enter. The spirit pronounced these words over her: "You shall dance in your red shoes until you become like a wraith, like a ghost, till your skin hangs from your bones, till there is nothing left of you but entrails dancing. You shall dance door to door through all of the villages, and you shall strike each door 3 times, and when people peer out, they will see you and fear your fate for themselves. Dance, red shoes, you shall dance." The girl begged for mercy, but before she could plead further, her red shoes carried her away. Over the briars she danced, through the streams, over the hedgerows, and on, dancing, still dancing, till she came to her old home, and there were mourners. The old woman who had taken her in had died. Yet even so she danced on by, and dance as she did, as dance she must. In abject exhaustion and horror, she danced into a forest where lived the town's executioner. And the axe on his wall began to tremble as soon as it sensed her coming near. "Please," she begged the executioner as she danced by his door, "please cut off my shoes to free me from this horrid fate." And the executioner cut through the straps of the red shoes with his axe, but still her shoes stayed on the feet. And so she cried to him that her life was worth nothing and that he should cut off her feet. So he cut off her feet, and the red shoes with the feet in them kept dancing on through the forest and over the hill and out of sight. And now the girl was a poor cripple and had to find her own way in the world as a servant to others, and she never ever again wished for red shoes.
That went dark fast.
It is a brutal. It is, yeah, fairy tales are not always light and sunny.
They were meant for adults to give a little shock and awe.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's a lot here. When Clarissa, when Dr. Pinkola Estes, when she uses the word wild. I mean, it's in the title, no, it's not. Oh yeah, myths and stories of the wild woman archetype, women who run with the wolves. And you've talked about nature. It was interesting. I didn't notice it until I was going back through the story in this book. There's a way in which I didn't know how to relate to that word. Like the first time I read this book, and then when you and I read it several years ago, that I think I have words for now. that feels important to clarify. And she also talks about instinct a lot. And it's, through that loss of instinct or through the loss of your wildness that, of course, all of these problems happen. So obviously, this little girl, she made with her own hands, she found scraps and saved them over time and then stitched together her own pair of shoes, which is a very wild, authentic, instinctual thing that nobody taught her how to do that, but she just knew how, even though she came from very unfortunate circumstances and didn't have a mom and a dad and was living out in the woods fending for herself. So that, we all have maybe a wildness or an instinctiveness, and then along comes society and family and culture and experiences, and we can very easily lose contact with that. That is, and Clarissa makes a distinction in this story. She's like, I am not talking about the need for socialization in children. Like, that is a very important process where we learn what the rules are and we learn to say please and thank you. That is not a loss of our wildness. That is just necessary to be able to function in society. And so I think how I would understand this connection to our wildness, I think to me, it feels like a deep connection to the natural unfolding of myself as a human, as a part of this natural world. Like our psyche or our soul, whatever word you want to use to denote lots of different layers potentially, it follows, like, in the same way that the natural world has laws of physics, our psyche has very natural laws to it. We do certain things and it feels bad for a very good reason. Like there's it's not just chaos. And so I think the degree to which we understand that and are attuned to it and can feel it and can abide by it, like that is what she's trying to point to, I believe. And there's a way in which I just didn't, I think I heard the word wild and I couldn't get rid of that filter that said wild is like showy or shocking in some kind of way, or, rebellious, or what, punk maybe. Like I could put all kinds of fantastical labels on it, but it's actually something much more subtle.
That is a great point. It reminds me, when I was in seminary, there was a book that came out within the Christian culture called Wild at Heart. And some of the ideas in it were scoffed and scorned from the hyper conservative, fundamentalist kind of folks. And it was speaking to something inside my heart that was like, don't be conformed to what other people are saying or the mold that everyone is trying to place you into. And yet there was this fear that would come up as I would sit with the idea of what does it mean to be wild at heart in my relationship and pursuit of God and godliness and holiness and all of these ideas that we find within the Christian world today. And it makes me think of how there is a wildness that is in a horse. Bianca, your daughter, loved horses. And the difference between gentling a horse and breaking a horse.
Yes. Yep. She was a huge, oh man, that captured so much of her attention. It was beautiful.
the spirit of an animal, you don't want to break it.
No.
You do want to give it confidence and assurance that you, as the greater, are going to lead and support and guide in a way that is beneficial for both. And there are moments in our lives when I think we realize, oh, I've lost a part of the instinctual wisdom, understanding, like intuition. Your gut knows what is what. And it has been a process of de-wilding in your life.
Well, and I think, so that's a great example with the horse. So often our culture, or even just our modern day workplaces, so scarcity mindset tries to break the people that are within the system. Scarcity mindset says there's a competition. If I have something, that means you don't. And so therefore we have to fight, and I have to be better than. And it requires lots of conformity and rules and hierarchies. Whereas the other version of gentling a horse, but, providing it a wise container that is grounded in what is best for the horse to allow it to thrive. If you think about, if you grew up in a culture or in a family structure that didn't know how to do that, and so in a way, you are much more like the broken horse as opposed to the gentled one, you lose, you don't know instinctually anymore. It gets very distorted. And so you end up, like this little girl in the story, she got put in nice clothes and told when to speak and how to dress and how to act. And so she lost touch with her instinctual knowing. And then what comes out is this obsessive, compulsive, it consumed all of her thoughts, these bright, shiny red shoes that she didn't make with her own hands. And then, of course, they ended up dancing her off into oblivion. And that same thing happens to us in all kinds of ways. And how much do we yearn for, obviously our own connection with our own instinctual knowing and creativity, but also actual wise containers to learn and grow in. We talk about that a lot. Like, where are the elders? But the truth is we have to find that within ourselves. That's
the idea of the wild woman represents someone who is fully alive, deeply rooted, and instinctively wise and authentically themselves.
Yep. The same for the man. Yep.
Yeah. The other word that came up was in another title of a Christian book, and it was written by a worship leader. And in the title, it has the word undignified. And to be undignified is different than being unwilded. So unwild is you're afraid to take risks, you're living performance instead of authenticity, you're seeking approval rather than inner truth, domesticated by cultural expectations, disconnected from intuition. To be undignified is different from unwild. It concerns how one's actions align with one's inherent worth and value. Someone may be undignified by acting beneath their own values, losing self-respect, being humiliated, or degrading themselves, behaving in ways that diminish their humanity or the humanity of others. So it's important that we recognize that I can be wild and open to my wildness and not lose my inherent worth and dignity as a human.
Yeah. So in other words, like being connected to our instinctual nature does not mean that we are walking around like an animal in some kind of undignified. I see what you're pointing at. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, that's very important. Well, it's like so I'll read these couple of sentences from so after in Clarissa's book, after she gives the actual story, she then analyzes it like a Jungian analyst would. And so what you just said reminds me of this that she wrote. As we shall see, the loss of the handmade red shoes represents the loss of the woman's self-defined life and passion and passionate vitality, and the taking on of a too tame life. This eventually leads to a loss of accurate perception, which leads to excess, which leads to the loss of the feet, the platform on which we stand, our basis, a deep part of our instinctual nature that supports our freedom. So there's a way in which we can, like that idea of being a dignified person can end up robbing us of our deep vitality. And in a way will then, how often have we all heard about very dignified people who act in abhorrent ways? So, there's a relationship there between to what degree are we connected to our authenticity, our wildness, our instinct, however you want to frame it, in a way that is generative as opposed to, just looking impressive and saying the right things but without truth and wisdom.
Because eventually those shoes start wearing us.
Yep. Yes, they do. Yep. And then they cause us to do all kinds of things that we would not ever choose to do. Take on a life of their own. So we'll dip our toe a little bit maybe in some of the mythology. Socially, shoes send a signal, a way of recognizing one type of person from another. So artists wear shoes that are different than a shoe that is worn by an engineer. So shoes can tell us something about what we are like, sometimes even who we are aspiring to be or the persona that we are trying out. And the archetypal symbolism of the shoe goes back to ancient times when shoes were a mark of authority. So rulers had them, slaves did not. And even today, like if you think about the way in which we make judgments about who a person is or what degree of intelligence maybe they have based on the shoes that we like, this is something that has stuck with us culturally in very, very deep ways. And the version that this tale grew out of came from cold northern countries where shoes were understood as instruments of survival. And so keeping the feet dry and warm keeps a person alive in the bitter cold and wet. And Clarissa writes, I can remember my aunt telling me that to steal someone's only pair of shoes in winter was a crime equal to murder. And so a woman's creative and passionate nature is at the same risk if she cannot hold on to her sources of growth and joy. These are her warmth and her protection. The symbol of the shoe can be understood as a psychological metaphor in that they protect and defend what we stand on, our feet. So in archetypal symbolism, feet represent mobility and freedom, in the sense that to have shoes to cover the feet is to have the conviction of our beliefs and the wherewithal to act on them. And so without psychic shoes, we are unable to negotiate inner and outer environments that require acuity, sense, caution, and toughness.
First of all, I love that these stories came from grandmothers.
Yeah.
And it was an oral tradition, and so it would be passed down from one to another, to another, to another. And the grandmother was not saying that you shouldn't admire beautiful things. Because oftentimes it was the matriarch in the family who was creating, whether it was a beautiful meal or clothing or festivals and rituals, braiding a little girl's hair and putting flowers in, so many different ways that beauty was a part of it. The point of the story, one of the points of the story, is to ask, what am I wearing versus what's wearing me? What am I giving my power to, and allowing my agency to be redirected somewhere else? I love shoes.
You have some excellent pair of shoes.
Shoes make a man.
Yep.
And shoes are shoes.
Yeah.
I have a pair of shoes that I still have. I haven't gotten rid of them yet. I got them on a weekend and visited the home of one of my hospice patients on that next Monday. And as I'm walking in the door, their small dog comes running up and scratches the tops of my all leather shoes. And I'm looking at them and I'm just like, they're toast. They're not repairable. There's nothing I can do to fix those shoes. And they're just a pair of shoes. So there are moments when a pair of shoes is not just a pair of shoes in our experience. And then there are moments where they have power in our experience. And then we can take back our own power and say, we're just going to let them go.
Yep. Yeah, like I think it is important as a hospice chaplain when you're entering somebody's space in this, very big way at a very important time in their life, that you are dressed professionally, that you carry yourself with dignity and with wisdom, and your shoes are just like one small symbol of that, but an important one. Like, the way you present would kind of be undermined in a really important way if you just had on these scruffy, grubby sneakers or something like that. So there is a layer at which...
That's true.
Yeah.
And that human that I was spending the next hour plus with was more important than the $200 that I had spent on those shoes.
And sometimes this is just what happens in life. Like,
it is.
We have a thing, and it gets ruined the very next day.
And there's a lesson in that.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lesson of, is this a moment of scarcity or is this a perspective of abundance?
What is your abundant perspective on that?
The abundant perspective was, I have several pairs of fresh shoes that I wear every week. And it was not the end of the world. They're just a pair of shoes. And I'm also very particular on the style and the shoes that I purchase.
Yeah.
And I take a lot of time and a lot of thought because that's important to me. And in that moment, it was a reminder not to take myself too seriously or my shoes.
It's wonderful.
It was. It didn't mean that I wasn't angry when I got back in my car and I sat down and I looked at my feet and I was like, oh boy. I was red shoe conscious in that moment.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I went through my process of acknowledging and having some gratitude for the less than 24 hours that I had had these shoes and the one time that I had worn them. And then I let it go.
Oh, yeah, that's great. That takes practice, I imagine.
It is a practice.
Mhm. Well, we will not on this podcast walk through everything that Dr. Pinkola Estes has to say about this wonderful story, but I will just briefly name that if you are someone who is looking for somebody who can model or show you very masterfully, here is how you look with eyes of discernment, or here's how you can kind of step into this space of understanding your own shadows and your own mind in a more intimate kind of way. So she goes on for the rest of this chapter to outline there are a number of traps that this little girl fell into. And of course, we are all the little girl. And these traps are universal to all of human experience. And so, for example, getting into the gilded cage. Sometimes life comes along and seems to bring us this, just take. I can't tell you how many people I've coached over the years in the corporate world who are tied with these golden handcuffs, as they like to call them, to their fancy corporate jobs. And they are comfortable in a materialistic point of view, but they are utterly miserable. Like their soul is being sucked from them and they are like, how, I feel dead inside. I can't, and they're just, now it doesn't have to be that way. Not all corporate high paying jobs are a gilded cage, but there's a way in which it's slippery. It's seductive. We have to be very careful about how we are relating to that space because it's kind of set up with a whole lot of scarcity that just traps us. And so anyway, so she goes through and I think she outlines 7 or 8 different traps throughout the story that are universal to pretty much any human. And so if you want somebody who can walk you through that masterfully, go by Women Who Run with the Wolves, even if you are a man, because these traps are for men too.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
As we wrap things up here today, I want to invite you to have a few moments of reflection. Asking the question, what are my red shoes? Where am I performing instead of living? What am I afraid would happen if I stopped dancing? Who was I before I believed I had to earn love? What would enough feel like? And if you're in a place where you can close your eyes and sit quietly for a few moments, let's take an opportunity to imagine red shoes. Can you see that there may be red shoes, beautiful red shoes, on your feet right now? What would it be like in this moment to begin to remove both of those red shoes off of your feet? Beginning with the right foot, and then the left. Place them beside you on the floor. Now, in your mind's eye, imagine yourself standing up. And you're standing up barefoot on the earth. No shoes, no socks. Just you and the wild earth beneath your feet. Feel your weight as you shift your weight from one foot to the other. Notice your breath. Breathing in, breathing out. No need to change or adjust your breath at all. Just notice. And then your heartbeat. Maybe you want to place a hand or both hands on your heart center. Feel the rhythm within. I invite you to ask this question. If no one were watching, who would I become? If no one were watching, who would I become? Perhaps abundance begins the moment we stop asking, how can I become enough? And start asking, what part of my true nature has been waiting patiently beneath the dance all along? Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's helpful to remember that even in situations of objective lack, like maybe there really isn't enough time or enough money, or we don't have the personal support, that we do always have an abundance of, one is awareness. Reality is ridiculous in its abundance. Like there's so much that is happening, and we can just bring our attention to the abundance of all of the reality around us. So we have an abundance of awareness, and we have an abundance of heart. So we feel very deeply, even when we're in a lot of pain. Like there's always an abundant connection there. And in that, can we find just a little bit of compassion, or a little bit of space, or a little bit of patience? And then also the opportunity of the future ahead of us is always another thing that is abundantly open. So even if we do just one small practice, 5 minutes a day, over the course of, let's say, 300 days in a year, that's 1,500 minutes that we've accumulated. And so like that accumulates. It's almost like putting a little bit of money in a bank account, and that does deeply change our life, just that one seemingly tiny little act every day. And so there are all kinds of really beautiful ways to find abundance in even the seemingly most harsh of situations. So thank you. The meditation was great.
Well, friends, go out there and buy a lottery ticket. Prove abundance in your life.
I do that sometimes. Hasn't worked yet, but it's fun to play.
Until next time, friends. Stay abundant.
Yes. We will see you then.
Bye for now.
Goodbye.